Welcome, everyone, to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg White. Jason's on the other line. Hey, Jay, what's going on, man? How you feeling? How's the recovery going? What's up?
Doing good, G-Dub. Yep, everything's fine, and had a good 4 days last week up at Dr. Ting's and did some rehab and just stuff that needed to be done to my leg, and always feel good going up there, and guys taking care of me for 25 years. So you walk in that place, you feel like you're going to get better, and I'm starting to. I think I turned a corner this last week, so it's definitely nice. Hopefully could be back on a bike in a few weeks.
How's the weather out there in California? You know, sunny California.
Brutal.
Everything's perfect.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that, last night the big thing here was huge thunderstorms. Like, we don't ever get lightning and thunder, and it's amazing how it dominates the first 30 minutes of the news when, all you guys on the East Coast, especially up in New York, are burying themselves out of snow, or unburying themselves out of snow, I guess. And but we're definitely not in a drought anymore, I don't think, out here, although it's just been getting pounded with rain. In fact, I'm looking out now. It's the same thing. It looks like it's going to come down. It's ruining everybody's riding out here for sure. There's no question.
Wah. And your poor pillow. I bet you were just snuggled up tight with your pillow last night, probably beating it up like, oh, thunderstorms.
Well, the thing is, right, is that you're out here, if it rains, literally nobody rides. Like,
really?
I'll go back east. I'll go to track days back east, and I'll do things. If it rains, everybody just laces them up and let's go. Out in California, nobody rides. I mean, I don't even think the AFM, now we're talking racing, I don't even think they race in the rain. They won't. They go to Sears Point, or Sonoma. So I know they don't race there in the rain anyways, but they don't race in the rain at Buttonwillow, and they don't race in the rain at Thunder Hill. So if it rains at all at AFM events, and anybody out there that's AFM guys, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but from what I understand, they don't race in the rain, period. So track day people out here won't even ride in the rain.
Oh, that's a bummer. I mean, it really is a bummer, Jay, because as you know,
so fun riding in the rain.
It's so fun riding in the rain, and a lot of it's that mentality. Years ago, years and years ago, somewhere in the 90s, talking to Colin Edwards one time, and he told me that, it's a mental game in the rain. You just got to convince yourself you love it. And so I took that nugget, and I always thought, okay, I'm a bigger guy, taller guy. I get more traction in the rain, like whatever BS story I told myself, but I loved it. And I remember going to Spa during the BMW Boxer Cup, and 4 days in the rain. And, obviously in Europe, no one cared. I mean, it was just go as fast as you can go, no warm up, nothing, just go. And I thought, yeah, this is great. I love it. And later that very next week, we went to Barber for the final round of the AMA stuff. And I was on a bike then, and it rained in a session. And I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm on a 600 in the rain. And, actually the only time I think in my life I ever finished a session in the top 10, and I was
Why do we always seem to go back to this, like, Greg White race reflection? So you're saying you're a top 10 guy in the rain?
I was that day.
Yeah. No, but you know what, Greg? There's something fun about riding in the rain. Honestly, I think a lot of people, they don't want to try it. They get nervous about it. Everybody, I think out here in California especially, we're so spoiled because our weather's so good. So people look at it like, well, it's raining on this day. I get, 300 and something other days out of the year I can ride when it's perfect, and I don't need to ride. But there is something to be said other than the cleanup part of it and taking care of your bike. That part kind of stinks, but it is fun getting into a rhythm in the rain, is it not?
Yeah, no, it is. And before we get into like our actual program, Jay, since you are a coach and all that kind of stuff, why don't you give us some advice if people are listening right now thinking, all right, Jason and Greg are saying, I'll give the rain a try. What would you say to someone who hasn't ridden in the rain, both on the street, on the track? What basic advice would you give them about riding in the rain?
The best thing for me when it starts raining with students or with people that you can't control when it's dry and perfect is it just chops everybody's ego in half, because now it turns into more of a survival day where everybody thinks, okay, I don't want to fall. My traction's limited. I know that I can't do this. I can't do that. So essentially what it allows you to do is smooth every control out that you have. So whether it be your braking, your downshifting, all your speed gets cut in half. So what it really does is it allows you to identify the things that you're actually not that good at, but you're doing it at half the speed that you normally would be doing it anyways in the dry. So you become a lot more conscious of your inputs, how much you get off the bike, what your movements are on the bike, how you the steering inputs that you're giving the bike through bars, through your legs, through your feet, through your ankles, all those different kind of things that you use. So it allows you to be a lot more subtle on the bike because the speed has decreased so much. And it really becomes kind of a battle of people get out there and they realize I'm not interested in pushing. I'm not interested in speed. So now it gives you a chance to go out there and really feel for the things that you should be feeling for in the dry. I think we get away with so much on these bikes, Greg, especially current models. Last 15 years, the bikes let you get away with so much stuff. But when it starts to get wet, a lot of that stuff gets taken away because now it really comes back down to the rider. They say the ultimate equalizer. So, for me, it's really about watching my movements on the bike, watching the subtleties in which that I can operate my motorcycle, getting my downshifts done in a timely fashion, not just relying on only my brakes to get my bike slowed down, especially in those conditions, because there's all kinds of different things that you can utilize in the wet that are going to help you kind of combat the traction levels that you've now not had as much as you would in the dry.
Yeah, for me, I think it's I add a little bit more rear brake than I normally would. I don't use rear brake in the dry, although
Mm-hmm.
when I was doing star schools, the first session in the morning, I would always roll out and I would test the rear brake just to make sure it works. And the session, very first time I rolled out after lunch, I would always test the rear brake because
Yep.
I don't
Just to
use
know
it
where it's at.
just to know where it is. And I don't use it on the regular. However, if I ever ran off the track, I want to use more rear brake when the traction, is reduced than I do front brake. And also in the rain, when I brake, I like to use a little bit more rear because, my mind's just thinking, okay, larger contact patch, you're keeping the bike more neutral in a neutral stance, those types of things. But yeah, you're totally right. It's all about smoothing that stuff. Totally right. Like, listen to me, like I'm sitting here in judgment. But
Thanks.
I mean,
Well, no, but you're
for me,
right.
it's always worked that way. Just smooth everything out, be more mindful of what you're doing. And if you look at lap times when we are at the racetrack in the rain, if the conditions don't change, you'll see every lap those times will get a little bit quicker and a little bit quicker and a little bit quicker. And that's because those riders are feeling out what they can do very slowly. Like they're not going out there and just hammering the brakes. So they're figuring out how much traction that they have both on the brakes, through the corner, and acceleration. So yeah, it's good advice from you, Jason.
Well, you know what the funny thing too is if most street riders or track day riders could actually get themselves to put a set of rain tires on a bike, they would realize how insane it is to be able to go and enjoy your favorite sport in wet conditions. Like when I started racing in Europe a lot, the tracks over there are a little bit different than they are here, of course, but I think it's pick your poison as well. Some of the tracks over here aren't as conducive for riding in the rain as places overseas. But but there is something so neat about having the speed that you need to have on rain tires, and you're not that far, like you say, you're not that far off really in the dry. Like our KTM, when we did the KTM 390 Cup Series a couple of years ago, and then now the Liqui Moly even this last year, you and I would sit there and laugh because when they put rain tires on those bikes, those kids were almost as quick as they
Oh
were in
yeah,
the dry.
this was crazy.
And yeah, there's so much grip when you have rain tires. It's shocking to know how much grip there really is. So, anyways,
All right, well let's move on from that, Jay. And let's start. What we were going to talk about, which is that MotoGP season is right around the corner. I mean, literally, when we're recording this, it's hours away from the season opener. So let's talk the Premier class. What do you think? We've had a talk at length about testing and who the players are and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk about this. Now, before I get into it, I do want to say this. This is a little interesting bit. I get the stat sheet from MotoGP, and you know how I love my stats.
yep,
Did you know that lining up for the Premier class this year, Jason, there are 19 riders, okay? Of those 19 riders, 11 of them have world championships.
it's
11.
crazy, amazing,
So
isn't it?
so if you're not a world champion in MotoGP, you're actually in the minority. Now,
That's
just to give
pretty
you an
funny.
isn't that funny? So this is across
Yeah,
all classes, across, say 125 Moto 3, 250 Moto 2, and
250. Yeah,
and 500 MotoGP. Because think about that, we still have 500 Grand Prix champion racing a motorcycle. So
crazy.
across all of it, 30 world titles between those 11 riders. Of course, Valley has 9, Marquez has 7, Lorenzo has 5, Zarco has 2. And who else comes to mind? Who do you think? I'm going deep with you on this one because this is
Well, you got Joan Mir, who's there. I think
yep,
Moto 3. You got Bagnaia, obviously
y-
this year. He won Moto 2.
yep.
So, God, who else would be? Neither one of the Espargaros won anything in like lower class, did they? I can't remember.
Yes,
Morbidelli.
Pole did on a Moto2 bike. Yep,
Okay, Pole
Morbidelli's
did.
one.
Yep, I do remember.
Yep.
Okay, and then Morbidelli would be another.
Yep. You
Um,
only have 3 to go.
I got 3 to go. Iannone. I think Iannone
Nope.
won.
Nope. Never.
He didn't.
Nope.
Okay, Zarco for sure. I know Zarco.
Yep.
He
Yep.
won
Yep.
one.
Yep. He won 2. He won 2 Moto2
He
titles.
won
Yep.
2. Gosh, Dovey. Right?
Dovey
Dovey
nailed it.
Dovey
125.
won.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I'm trying to think who would be the last. I'm missing one right now, huh?
Yeah, only one.
Well, Petrucci won a 1,000 Superstock championship. I know that, but you're talking strictly in the MotoGP class or
In the MotoGP
paddock,
series,
right?
correct. Mm-hmm.
What about Rabat?
Tito Rabat. Look at you. Moto2. Yep, that's
Is
it.
that what it was?
Yeah.
It was Tito Rabat, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I didn't do too bad.
That was awesome.
I didn't
30
do too
world
bad,
titles. No, you
yeah.
did amazing. 30 world titles, 15 of those MotoGP, 10 Moto2/250s, and then 5 of those. Total wins between all of them, though. Total wins between the whole field.
Oh my gosh. Can't imagine.
And by the way, did you know that every single rider that is going to grid up for the MotoGP race this year has a win, at least one win?
What did Siren win?
Oh, you know what? He's not on this list.
Ha!
Sorry.
Yeah,
he's not on the
there
list
you go.
because there's more
Call
riders
you out
than
right
this.
off the bat.
This list that I'm
you
looking
out.
at, only 19, because there should be 25 riders taking the grid this year, not 19, because you have Bradley's going to be a wild card. So yeah.
Bradley's a wild card. Yeah, he'll be at like 4 of them, I think. But
yeah, 4 of them. So Nakagami's won 2 races. Carol Abraham won a Moto2 race.
Nakagami. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Carl Abraham won. He won like the final round at Valencia, I think, one year. Like
totally forgot about that.
4 or 5 years ago or something.
Yeah.
You know, all I know is I'm so excited for MotoGP. Like I was thinking about it last night because I always think about our podcast the night before. And what's really funny is, you know, we work on this during the week. You and I talk a lot, but the night before I sit there and I think about stuff. And MotoGP is in such a great place. They've done such a good job with making sure that there's numerous brands up front. It's just got so much diversity right now in it. Like when you see guys like Quartararo up there at a test and Bagnaia up there in a test, and we got Joan Mir on a Suzuki, it's just in such a good spot right now, it seems. And the trickle down for that, like the Moto2, the 3, even down into World Superbike and so on, the not controversy, but the great first round of World Superbike that we had that kind of got everybody stirred up. I feel like I've seen a change in motorcycle racing and where it's going now. And I think that we owe a lot of that to MotoGP and the stories that are there and the things that are being told, because I don't know if there's been a year, probably since last year, I don't know if there's been a year where there's been more excitement around MotoGP than there can be this year. It just seems like I think the level of equipment has gone up for the teams that are like the satellite teams. I mean, Greg, think about it. 5 years ago when you were on a satellite team, okay? Don't you think the equipment is by far and away better as a satellite rider now than it was 5 years ago?
Absolutely. Especially with Ducati's advancements now and riders getting 18 models and those types of things. That helps out a lot as well, because there's so many Ducati privateer or, you know, non-factory teams, I should say.
Yep. And when you look down the list of things, and you got 4 KTMs, and it kind of goes back to what we discussed in the World Superbike, where we had 18 riders and like 15 of them were on like proper motorbikes. We got the same thing going right now in MotoGP. I mean, these Petronas Yamahas have proven to be pretty fast in testing. You look at Paul Espargaro, he's really the only one that's done anything on the KTM so far. But I mean, even Nakagami, it looks like the Hondas have got better. So manufacturer-wise, it seems like the manufacturers are not just putting all the emphasis just on the big teams. It's definitely trickled down, so it's made it a lot more fun to watch.
Doesn't it seem like the CRT experiment was just a few years ago when Richard Stamboli built his own bike? And that was done for a reason. CRTs were introduced, you know, actual parts that you can buy over the counter, motors that are from street bikes, because they needed to fill that grid with. I mean, MotoGP has done an amazing job since,
really have,
you know, having 990s and 800s even, you know what I mean? Like, or even when they did the 500s, remember when they were doing the 500s and you could get that, what size was that motor, that 2-stroke Honda that was like didn't have as much horsepower but cornered better,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So it's come a long way. Which brings me to this question then for you, Jay. Let's look at it immediately. Qatar.
Yep.
Who's going
Yeah.
to stand on the podium in Qatar for you? Who do you think? Because this is probably the most difficult decision I've had to make in recent years, and years, looking at the talent and the equipment level right now.
It's almost impossible to pick now. Like, and this goes back to our last little conversation, because there's so the battle at the front now is going to be full of 6-7 guys every weekend. What was it, Greg? 3 years ago, like 3 years ago, everybody was talking about the aliens, the 4 aliens. It's just, it's not like that anymore.
No.
I think 2 years ago we had 8 or 9 winners in a season, which was great. It's so hard to pick the winner, but when I looked at this question and you gave it to me at the beginning of the week, you got to go back and kind of historically look at who has done well there. The Ducatis always seem to run well. I can't really put an emphasis on what I saw in the MotoGP test at Doha this last week or a week and a half ago, because I think that there's one guy holding the cards very close to his chest. He never really put in a real time attack effort, I don't think. And he was down the sheets a little bit. But I think that you're hard pressed. First race at Doha with the straights and all those things, I got Dovey winning. And a lot of people will be surprised at that because of, especially my friends, because they know kind of where I feel Dovey is in the spectrum of all this stuff. I feel like he's on a great bike, got a great team. I've been worried about Ducati over the course of this offseason, as far as their testing goes, because they lost Lorenzo, they lost Stoner, they lost some valuable information there, I think, Greg,
Mm-hmm.
So I've got Dovey to win. The guy I got second is another bit of a surprise because he's the fastest tester that there is, but I got Vinales in the hopes that he can get a good start, and they've sorted out some of the things on that Yamaha to where he can get off with the lead group early. He's proven to have race pace after half distance and coming through. I think that the Yamaha has obviously found a step because the Petronas Yamahas have been very consistent and good up there as well. And I got Marquez to finish third. And the reason for that is I don't know how healthy he is. Don't know where he is at with the shoulder, but he just has you'd be stupid to ever leave Marquez off of any podium.
Just straight up, you'd be stupid. Just end of story. You'd be stupid. Yeah.
Just stupid. And you know what? I went one further with this question, Greg, and I'm going to ask you the same when I get your top 3 here in a minute. But I picked a wild card that I thought could maybe be on the podium.
Okay.
And I picked Petrucci, and I think he's coming out with a lot to prove. I think he feels like a lot of people, myself included, kind of were like, they got rid of Lorenzo and they hired Petrucci, even though I love the guy to death. I love the guy. But he's been close to winning a couple of races. I think he wants to shake the mantra of he's only good in the wet. And I think he could be a guy that could probably put it on the podium this weekend as well. I just, that would be kind of a wild card. Who first off, do you like my picks?
I like your picks. And, one of the things, we have Chad Reed on this show all the time, and he's a massive, massive MotoGP, obviously, fan. And I asked him the same questions I'm asking you, and I have it. And my plan was to answer my question, then play Chad. But honestly, right now, Jason, I really want to play Chad's thing. You want to hear it now, or do you want me to answer first?
Is it going to, well, see, the thing is that then you're going to have more time to think. No, I'm kidding.
No.
Go ahead, play Chad. No, it's okay. Play him. Let's see what he's got.
Right.
Let's
see
what
he
says.
Yeah, because you're going to be, yeah.
I'll go with podium at Qatar first. I think Dovey wins. I think Mark's on the podium in second, and I think you know what? I'm going to put Mark third, and I think Maverick finishes second with Valley fourth. That's my podium. I think that it's a Ducati track. It always has been. The Yamahas do better there. It's cooler conditions. I think Maverick and Valley have a shot at it. And I think Mark rides a conservative race, not 100%, not really willing to throw it down the track at the first one, and he picks up the scraps on the podium.
I mean, isn't it amazing? Two great minds think alike, Chad. That's all I can say.
Just stop eating the microphone, pal. All right, just calm down. When you were giving your answer, I was like, no way. Just stop talking right now because I'm like, man, two world champions going the national champions too. I'm like, man, you guys are thinking exactly alike. I'm so far off of what you guys think, it's not even funny. But I
Well,
thought
all you got to do is look at our fantasy Supercross to know that you're not going to be really close. Who do you got, G? Let's hear it. Let's see if we can make an argument for your three.
well, Dovizioso for sure. I just think he's going to win it. If you look at the stats from the years, I know it doesn't mean anything, but in 11 years of MotoGP, I mean, the guy's hasn't been outside the top 7. He's been the first Ducati across the line in the last 5 years at Qatar. I just think that Ducati, like you're saying, was holding their cards. I think, and I don't know why nobody's talking about him. I think Lorenzo's going to finish second. I think Lorenzo's going to get on this HRC, and he's going to just be pumped to finally get. I think there's going to be the X factor, which is more than the tires, more than the motorcycle, more than the riding skill. I just think he's so excited to do it. I'm going to put him in second place, and then I'm going to think.
I love those first two so far, Greg. I can see arguments for that. Yep, what's third?
And I think Vinales will be third. I do. I just think he's been testing really well, but I do think it's going to be I'm not going to pick a wild card necessarily, but I do think that it's going to be 5, possibly 6 riders that are all going to be close. I don't think anybody's going to check out this year. I think it's all going to be very close, and we're going to see some good racing. That's what I think.
Doha is generally pretty close over the last couple of years, but the Ducati down the straight, I think the other guys have gotten closer. I don't really know, when I just look at, I've been so critical. I can't say critical is really the word. I haven't been critical, but I've been semi-critical of Dovey, but he's really proven to me that he can. It doesn't matter what bike you're on. If you're on the bike that's got an advantage or not an advantage, it just doesn't matter. If you're on that bike and you're winning races, he's proven that he's been able to do that. And he's had a couple straight fights with Mark. The biggest question I had about Lorenzo, because I actually, we'll get into some of our other questions here in a minute, but it's health again. And it's not so much even about the bike this time. I think when he was on the Ducati, there was a lot of people that were concerned about, will he, adapt to the Hondas quick? I think he has. I think he will. He looks more comfortable. I haven't seen him in race distance. Until I see him in race distance, it's hard to choose Lorenzo off the bat. And both Honda guys are a little bit dinged up, apparently, right? They're both a little bit still.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. But I think that your top three are great also.
They're okay. I mean, it's hard to not pick Mark. It really is. It's
correct.
hard to not pick Mark for the win. It's hard to not pick Marquez for the podium. But I think you and Chad both hit on something, which is, he knows how to win championships over the course of the year. Do you let it hang out here? Is it really that important? And I think he won't decide until he's actually in the race.
Well, and see, that's my problem with a couple of guys that have shown some pace during the offseason that I feel this race pays the same as the rest of them. But there's such a build up to Doha. It's like A1. You always see those crazy, you see guys winning at A1 that normally won't. But this thing at Doha, the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of veterans kind of come up to the front. The guy that I'm surprised none of the three of us had on our list that I rate very, very high is Alex Rins, because he's got tremendous pace throughout testing, and he'll be there. I mean, Greg, this is going to look like a Moto3 race, I feel like, for the first 10 or 12 laps. I think that you're going to have 8-10 guys up at the front. So
But my thing with Rins only at Qatar, or not only at Qatar, but at Qatar, is just I'm not convinced of the motor of the Suzuki yet.
Correct. Like, could he lead coming out of the last corner? Because I definitely see a train of guys coming out of the last corner together, and that's where I think that Chad and myself both are looking at that Ducati as in the past nobody's been able to draft him. He's been able to lead. Last year I think it was Marquez made the last ditch effort in the last corner and ran wide and this and that, and Dovey was able to outdrag them down the straight. And I think that the Ducati just has some legs, and I think Dovey knows how to win. I think that's going to pay big dividends for him. So, and I think that Petrucci, for me, the only reason I even picked him as a wild card is we know he's got the speed. We know he's got the pace. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. I think he's hungry. I just hope that he doesn't get ahead of himself and allows the race to get to the last 4 or 5 laps to see where he is, because I think he could be the wild card. So interesting. Yeah, and it's great because Chad and I, we didn't talk about that first, which it's good
No,
to
you
hear him
didn't.
say, which is so funny. And no, but I agree. So Greg, how many different race wins? Sorry, how many different racers do you think will win a race this year? So when we started looking at this list of guys, and what's really insane is the stats that you gave before we started this of how many like world championships we have in this field this year, how many race wins. You actually didn't get to how many total race wins we have amongst this group. What was it?
Total race wins amongst the group itself. Let's
I
see.
thought you had that stat, and
I did.
and we didn't quite get to it.
419 race wins for
It's
those.
just insane.
For those that have won race. So of the 19 of 25 that have won a race in the MotoGP series itself, 419 wins. 202 of those are in MotoGP, which by the way, the bulk of that goes to Rossi at 89, Marquez at 44, and Lorenzo at 47. The only other person who has double-digit wins in MotoGP is Dovizioso at 12. But still, 419 wins across the board. That's 19 proven winners.
It's just and then you sit there and you think, okay, so how many of these guys this year in this field are going to win races? And I think I said earlier was it 2 years ago, Greg, or 3 years ago? We had 8 guys. I think it was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2017.
Mm-hmm.
We had 8 guys win, and I mean, you could make an argument. I mean, when you look down the list, I'm just looking at right now, session 3 of Qatar. Vinales, Quartararo, Marquez, Rossi, Lorenzo, Morbidelli, Paul Espargaro. Top 7 guys have all won races. Nakagami, did he win? He's won a race. Miller's won. Rins has won. Joan Mir. I mean, you go down the list. It's like, it's crazy when you think about this. So let's hear it. I want to hear how many you think are going to win, and I want you to give me names.
Okay. And I'm going to give you 2 wild cards that are like more like honorable mentions who I think could do it. So I think 8 total this year. Okay. I think Dovizioso can win, obviously. I think Vinales. I think Rins, Lorenzo, Rossi. I also think that Cal Crutchlow is going to get a win this year, especially if
No, wait, are those 5
that
you just mentioned? You're saying 8 though, so
I'm
you're going to
saying
go
8.
with Cal as well.
Yeah,
okay, gotcha.
With Cal as well.
Yep.
And I'm going with Rossi and Morbidelli.
You already got him.
Oh, okay. I did say Rossi.
Morbidelli.
Petrucci and Morbidelli.
Yep.
I think Morbidelli, if he can really, it's his second year, I think that, again, that it's got to be that first 4 to 5 races if that bike's similar. Now, on a wild card side, reading what I've read about Jack Miller and talking to Chad Reed, who is pretty tight with Jack Miller, Jack is so excited about the jump from the, 17 bike to the 19 bike that he's on now that I think he's going to be my wild card. Like, he's my honorable mention. Like, if the stars align, I think Miller's got it in him. He's very tenacious and he rides hard. And I think if he gets a whiff of the front again, like he's done before, and keeps it on 2 wheels, he's got a good chance of winning a race. But so I'm going to go with 8. 8 will be my number. And, 9 is my like safety. Like I told you so at the beginning of the year kind of thing. But yeah. So Dovi, Petrucci, Vinales, Crutchlow, Rins, Morbidelli, Lorenzo, Rossi.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
And you?
I like it. I think you got all the main players there. There's a couple guys that I would question, and I think that's probably why my list is a little bit shorter. I've got 6 for me.
All right.
I try to look at it very diplomatically and really look at how I felt about what I've seen over the last year. I went with Marquez, Vinales, Dovi, Rins, Lorenzo, and Petrucci. Those are my 6 guys. And there's one guy that's missing off that list that I'm sure everybody notices.
Well, he hasn't won in
I've
been a while.
I look at it and I think that in the place that we're at now, and people will be like, oh, Al Rossi's 40. Age has nothing to do with it for me, because I think that the bikes are easier to ride now than the stuff he's been on in the past. The thing I have a problem with is he hasn't won in a while. And I'm a huge Valley fan. Obviously, everybody knows that I like Rossi, but there's more guys capable of winning now than there has been, Greg, in I can't tell you how long.
Yeah.
You just named 8 guys that you think can win a race. When was the last time that you can honestly say that you could look at the MotoGP calendar and go, there's legitimately 8 or 9 guys? Now, the thing I left myself open for here is that Rins and Petrucci have never won a race before, but I just think that what I've seen out of both of them, Rins led a lot of laps last year. Petrucci's led a lot of laps. Now he's on the factory team. That could be the shove that he needs. The problem is that really Valley only at Sepang last year where he led and he did an amazing job. But other than that, he's been for the fight at the front. He hasn't really been a factor. And I feel like that there's too many people right now that have the capabilities of winning. Too many people that are capable of running up front. And I think that decreases the odds. And so for me, will Rossi be there in the championship? I think he's going to be that guy that can finish 2nd through 5th every weekend. So yeah. But when we look at actual outright race pace for the win, I like the 6 guys that I have.
Rain. Rossi's going to win in the rain this year. Mark my words. It's going to rain.
Yeah.
And he's going to win.
I think when it rains, he's going to have to deal with Rins. He's going to have to deal with Petrucci. Even when you watch the last race of the year in the rain at Valencia, Rins was gone. He took off, and then it started to dry, and he rode very smart. Like he could have kept pushing, and when Dovey was catching him and this and that. So I just think that it's gonna be interesting. I love the Jack Miller thing. I think I love Jack too. But yeah, when you got to really look at it, if I had to put money on, hey, these are the exact guys that are going to win, I think that there's only 6 for me.
Okay.
So
I'm going to put them on the whiteboard, so we'll keep track of that all year long. Let's move on. Oh, let's move on to Chad Reed.
Did Chad give an opinion on this? Did he?
Yeah. Let's move on to Chad's.
Let's
Here we
hear
go.
it.
I think as far as winners, I think Dovey wins, Mark wins, Maverick wins, Jorge wins. I think Valentino wins finally. I'm scared to say that. But I don't think we see any other surprise winners. I don't think Petrucci wins. I don't see him as a winner. My wild card winner my 2 wild cards would be Jack and Rins. Rins catching a perfect weekend, but I don't necessarily see Alex as a winner either yet. Jack has that more determined. He's won before, so there's no reason why he could not do it again. He has that more killer instinct in him. So I put Jack for sure in as a wild card, but I think Rins on his given weekend can do what other Suzuki riders have done and just be that much better, and it all comes together on that weekend.
So he's really just picking. He's got 4 or 5. I'm sorry, 5 with Valley.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you heard what he said. And I know Chad loves Rossi. They're buddies. And he said that one scares him a little bit, right? And I'm the same exact way. Like, I want nothing more than to pick Rossi. How great of a story would that be for the series, for just the controversial side of things of all the haters that don't like him, and which is crazy to me. The guy's 40. The guy is 40 years old, and I hate even mentioning the fact that age is a thing, but there are guys that are 20 years younger than him racing against him right now. And because I think Quartararo is like 19, isn't he? Isn't Quartararo still a teenager?
Yeah. Let's see.
You sit there and you look at it and you think, why wouldn't we just pick Valley to win? He led a race last year and he was pretty dominant in that race. Marquez was coming and he fell. But I'm right with Chad. I like all the picks. The Miller Rins thing, to me, the only difference is that if there is a difference, Rins has just proven to be the guy that's been up front a lot more last year than Jack was.
Mm-hmm.
Jack has won. Jack's an incredible qualifier. That could be something that could lead into something good for him. I think this year it's so key to get on those first 2 rows in this MotoGP class, because it will be increasingly hard to pass if you get back beyond 3rd, 4th row, even if you're within 3 or 4 tenths of a second from from the pole position. So I like his pick. So he had Dovey, Marquez. He had kind of the
four main guys,
kind of the main
or five main guys.
Four main guys.
And his point is that he just thinks that winners win. And if you don't win on a consistent basis, that with the field as deep as it is, yeah, of course there could be someone who just, I don't want to say lucks out because you have to be there at the end of the race, but just gets like a good, two people hitting each other and the door opens up kind of thing. But so he's gone a little bit more conservative than you. I went wide open. How
I like that you did it. I like that you want so many winners. I just think that I think that when you look at your wild cards, there's a couple guys, like I don't think Cal will win this year. I don't think that. I just don't. That's just my feel. I don't think that he's gonna. I don't know. I just don't feel like he's going to be the guy that's going to be winning.
Yeah.
And I think, especially with his ankle, depending on how that continues if it plagues him at all during the year, I love the idea of Morbidelli winning, because when you talk about winners and you talk about champions, that's what's so crazy about the stats you gave earlier. All these guys have won. They're all winners. They've all won at some point,
Yeah.
How does that transfer? Morbidelli's been really fast. And I think he's a very bright, smart rider. And yeah, I mean, he could be there. He could be there for a win. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting season.
All right. Well, what about world champion? Who do you think is going to win the world championship?
Everybody, I'd love to be able to be, more poetic about it and pick somebody that's like, oh, I think that this guy is going to win. But, until somebody beats Marquez, you'd be stupid to pick anybody else. Anybody else that you pick is a heart bet. That's how I look at it. So
100%.
Anybody that you pick to beat him is just because you're a fan of that person, or because you want to see change. We're going through this in World Superbike right now. Everybody loves Bautista right now. Everybody loves Bautista because he beat Johnny Ray. That's why they love him, because up until Phillip Island, up until last year at Phillip Island MotoGP race, nobody even mentioned the words Alvaro Bautista hardly anymore at all. But it's a feel-good story. He jumped on Lorenzo's bike. He was leading the MotoGP race. Now everybody's like, oh, Bautista. And I love the kid. Everything I've ever heard about him is great. I think it's the same thing in MotoGP right now, Greg. If you're betting against Marc Marquez to not win the championship, he's more intelligent than he's ever been. He's coming off a year where he's had shoulder surgery, so he's had 2 months off the bike, which I think will actually, in a way, do him a favor. I think in a way, because it just gave him time to rest, recalibrate, recuperate. I think that the season is so long and it's so hard. He realizes now that there's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 guys up at the front. He's going to be willing to take those seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, where in the past, I think it's been, he just wants to be on the podium. I'm not going to be shocked to see Marquez finish 4th or 5th this year and still be smiling and going, hey, I got my points. Let's get on to the next race.
Yeah.
I think he's more intelligent. I think as he gets older, his intelligence level gets greater. As long as the drive is there, Marquez is my guy. My wild card in this deal, even though I know we never asked for wild cards between us, but I want to know who you think who your wild card is Vinales for me. I think he's proven that he can win races.
Ooh.
Yep. I think he's proven that he can win races.
Yeah.
He's fast. Mm-hmm. If he qualifies good, if Yamaha's got this bike better as far as him being able to run fast qualifying times and get in those first 2 rows, the way I looked at this was who has proven to be quick in a time trial type of fast 1-lap thing. Vinales is always there.
Can you smell that right now? Can you smell that, Jay? It smells like you're an idiot, is what it smells like. It smells like you're a full-blown Vinales. Are you serious right now in Yamaha? I mean, first of all,
I just said he's my wild card.
That's fine.
I told you who I picked.
I know, I got it, but I'm going to get this out of the way. Marquez. Okay, my wild card is going to be Lorenzo, because I just think the guy is a world champ. He also knows how to manage a season, and he's on the same bike. So I got to go with wild card has got to be inside the HRC team, because it can't be all Marquez. It's got to be a little bit of HRC. I'm not saying it's all HRC.
I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. You want to know what's going to happen?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, I have Lorenzo on my piece of paper in front of me. Literally, I'm looking at his name right now as a wild card guy, and I scratched him for Vinales. And I'm going to tell you why. Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Because at some point in this season, at some point, Marquez and Lorenzo are going to get together, and there's going to be a touch, and there's going to be a wine fest. I picked Lorenzo last year in my pool, MotoGP pool. He's going to go spouting off and crying about he might not even get touched. That crap he did last year at Aragon, where he blamed Marquez for him crashing in turn one off the start, was the biggest joke as a racer that I can honestly think I've ever seen. Like, the problem is that there's, as amazing and as good as he is on his days, when Lorenzo's leading races and he's out front and doing his thing, he's like one of the best to ever watch. But the racer side of him, there's just too much crying. And there's going to be a point this year where he loses his little temper, and Marquez and him are going to build a wall. It's going to happen. It's inevitable for me. It's going to happen. And there's going to be some serious crying. And Marquez is going to be sitting over on his side of the garage, not giving two you-know-whats that Lorenzo's over there whining and crying. He ain't going to care. And that's the only reason that I think prevents him from being world champion this year.
All right, let's hear what Chad had to say about Chad Reed had to say about this.
And then you want title? If I'm putting my own money on it, I don't see Mark getting beat at this point. You know, I just think he's too strong over a series. I think he knows when to push him, knows when to hold him, and I think that that's important from a championship aspect. I think that, you know, like we talk about offline, but it's like he typically knows when he can crash or when he can afford to crash, and he's learned that, and I think that that's important at this point. So I think Mark wins again.
Yeah, and what he was talking about is we have a lot of conversations about MotoGP, more than we have about Supercross, for sure, Jay. But we talked about how many crashes Marquez had last year, but how many he actually had in a race, you know, versus, you know,
doesn't do it.
He doesn't do it. And that's why Chad was like, hey, he knows when to push it. He knows, okay, I can afford to crash here in practice, you know, and he's like Jamie Hacking in a way. You know, Hacking very rarely got hurt when he raced Superbike and he crashed. He was like, or like Rap, you know, he'd crash and then bounce right back up, where a guy like Tommy Hayden would say more fragile. And so I think Marquez knows that about himself, that he can get away with stuff. Plus, obviously, technology is better. You have air suits, you know, MotoGP homologation, track homologation is incredible. You know, they give him a lot of room to be able to crash and to get up and walk away, which is awesome. But yeah, I mean, you said it. You'd be a fool. You'd be dumb if you bet against Marc Marquez for the simple fact that no one's beat him yet. And it's right. It's not like anybody went out and started whipping everyone in consistently in testing, you know, this season. Is Marquez vulnerable this year? Yes, I think so, because of the development of the HRC bike. They lost development time. They lost the ability to test everything they wanted to because both their riders are dinged up. So I think if it's going to be done,
you say that, and I agree with you on that to an extent, but when you look at like a Nakagami, who's shown to be pretty fast at all the tests, and I think even Cal's come out and said that the Honda has improved. They've definitely done some things there, Greg, that the bike seems like it's maybe a little bit more rideable than it has been, no?
Yeah, no, I agree. But Nakagami's also on the 18 bike. So for sure it's a better bike.
Right, I got you, yeah.
But I just think that having a full complement of test riders over at Ducati makes me think, But it is interesting that we're not talking about Dovizioso as a wild card to win the title, even though we know how good that motorcycle is. But
Dovi just has too many weekends where he finishes 7th to me.
I agree.
Like all of a sudden, like there's going to be, I think the worst thing that you can have as a rider is somebody saying, you look at Doha, the reason why we picked Dovi to win at Doha is because it's got a straightaway that is so long, and he has shown that he can run the pace and he can be there. And if he's there at the end, he's going to be very, very hard to beat. We don't talk about Dovi in a way where Dovi's going off and winning races by 8, 9, 10 seconds, do we?
No.
It's always the end of the races. You know, look at Austria, where even last year, where with Lorenzo, he was battling with Lorenzo this last year, but 2 years ago when him and Marquez almost got together, it's always like end of race stuff where Dovi really puts his fist up and fights, which I love. I love that about him. But I don't know what it is. Maybe he's just a very quiet spoken guy, and we don't look at him as a guy that's going to be dominating in MotoGP. but it's very hard to pick him to win a championship. To like, if Lorenzo would have been on the Ducati going into 2019, had things shaken out differently than they did during the season last year, where he wasn't doing well, and all of a sudden he goes on a 3-win streak. I'll tell you right now, I could make a very serious, hard case that Lorenzo could win the championship this year and take it away from Marquez.
I agree with you.
In fact, I might have picked him. I might have just said right today, I might have said, I'm taking Lorenzo to win the championship on the Ducati.
Right. But
because he's shown that he has the ability to get out front, control races from the front, win them at 5-10 second margins.
And he's smart enough to know when to take the beating. Yeah, no, I totally. Before we go on to the next topic, which is looming, I'm just curious to get your input on this. If Valentino Rossi was to win the world title, what should he do? I say drop the mic and retire your ass as quickly as you can. That's what I say.
I think it's something that to me has a 7% chance of happening. Okay. So when you think of it in those terms, it's got such a minimal chance of that actually happening that it's hard to think about. I think Rossi's the kind of guy that just loves being where he's at. I think he loves training every day at the ranch. He's enjoying bringing up the kids. But I think he still enjoys the competition, the racing. He would be the kind of guy that would probably motivate himself to say, well, nobody thought I could do it at 40. Everybody didn't think I could get this done. I'm going to show them I can do it 2 years in a row. Like, to me, I've never been the guy that retires guys. I've never been the guy that says that guy should quit, because really what burns inside of each athlete is personal. And it's one of those things where I think that you can even look at the guy that's on our show every week. There's been guys writing Chad off for 2-3 years, and he puts it on the podium 2 weeks ago. And as an athlete, it's your time when it's your time. And there's guys that go past their time, and we see that, but it doesn't make us like them any less, right? And I think that I've never been a guy that says that, hey, if that guy does this, he should be done. He should quit. He should stop. He should. I hope he does whatever he chooses to do. If he won, it would be the biggest story in the history of our sport if that guy won another MotoGP World Championship. I mean, and cement himself as the absolute GOAT, no problem. Greg, we get lost in the MotoGP talk, but the underclasses of MotoGP, being Moto2 and Moto3, you and I have talked about it. For me, I love watching all races, everything. And I think this year, with the changes in brand and so on with Moto2, our champion has moved on, obviously, and moved up to MotoGP. We've got not only did he move up, but he took a couple guys with him that were in Moto2 last year. Joan Mir's moved up, as well as Miguel Oliveira has moved up. Fabio Quartararo moved up. So we've got a lot of guys that have jumped up into, a lot of guys this year that are Moto2 that we're basically going to be looking at a new world champion, unless Tom Luthi can come through and win that championship again. I think that we're looking at a really interesting crowd of Moto2s. We got Eneo Bastianini. He's jumped up from Moto3 to Moto2. Fabio Quartararo and Moto3 world champion Jorge Martin has also jumped up, and he's on the Red Bull KTM bike as well this year in Moto2. But with the different brand and stuff, there's been quite a few. When you look at the testing times, it's been pretty close, and it's been really fast. Have you paid any attention to Moto2 at all during the off season so far?
Oh yeah, of course. I like it because of the story of the change of Moto2. It's not the same. I mean, for those that don't know, this year they have transitioned from the Honda inline 4 600cc motor that's been used since the beginning. Now it's a Triumph triple based off of the 765 street triple motor, which gives it more torque, which is something we're going to talk about. But additionally, Magneti Marelli, MotoGP, and Triumph all got together and they said, we are going to have basically the same electronics that MotoGP bike has, but with more limited parameters. So now Moto2 becomes the class we always wanted it to be, which is a real transition class from Moto3 to MotoGP in terms of education. Riders now get motorcycles that they can ride a little bit differently, because it seemed like with the Honda and the way the chassis were designed, it was like there's really one way to ride the thing, in order to
Yeah.
win. So now you're going to have different riding styles available with the torque that's available. Engine braking is now available. Some other, things that are going to make it safer, in terms of traction control. So from that standpoint, Moto 2 is more interesting to me than it's been in a while. And
Yeah.
what's really interesting, though, is after the last test, or the test that they've had so far, is Sam Lowe's. I mean, this new motor seems to have revived, in a way, Sam Lowe's career, at least from the results that he had from last year. Remy Gardner, is another one.
Great.
Like, right? He's up in the mix. And you mentioned,
Remy Gardner broke both his legs last year, still came back, rode, but he's been another kid that's been chipping away, son of 500 world champion Wayne Gardner. Okay, so
yeah,
but he's chipped away. We've seen him in the series for 4 years, but now these last tests, he's been up in that top 5 every test.
yeah. So I mean, I love it. Joe Roberts, lone American in the series,
love it.
He finished 24th overall, was only 1.9 off the front, and he's on the American racing team. Do you know KTM?
Yep.
Do you know who's behind that effort? I was curious if you knew much about that whole effort.
I don't,
Yeah,
and I
don't
saw
know
Joe
either.
a lot. I saw Joe a lot during the offseason at Chuckwalla, and his teammate is Iker Lecuona, who I loved last year. He is proven right now to just kind of have a little bit of pace on Joe, and he had pace last year. If you remember, he was Sam Lowe's teammate last year, and but Lecuona he's a young guy as well, but he's proven to be really fast. And give you a couple other names in this, Greg, just so people can look at like where this has come from. But Philip Odell, another guy, has jumped up from Moto 3. Marco Bezzecchi, another one. Dominica Gerta is still around. How about Jake Dixon from England, BSB Championship? It's great to see him on the Angel Nieto team. And he has adapted pretty well, I think, when you look at it. And I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be, as the season goes, it'll progress. I've talked to a few people about him, and they've actually said, Jay, like, look out for him a little bit, because he's going to be a guy that's going to be there. We talked about Jorge Martin being there, and D'Antonio, Bastianini, all these guys, Locatelli, they've all moved up from Moto 3. So, and then of course, when you look at guys that could be potential champions, the people I look for probably in this class are going to be Brad Binder. I think Brad Binder, Luca Marini is going to be another guy that has shown to, have race winning pace and really came on at the end of the year and was able to kind of be up there. So you talked about Sam Lowe's, and I've gotten to know Sam a little bit through Alex. I've gone text messages back and forth with Sam, and there's just something a little bit different. And I don't know if what we're looking at is real. I'm hoping that the guy can put a season together, because outright pace, Sam is incredibly fast, and he's very happy to be back on with Grassini. I mean, this is a team he kind of had been going with after he won his World Supersport Championship. Then he went to MotoGP, obviously with Aprilia. That was a disaster. Last year, some of the things that I know were going on for Sam would definitely cause you a lot of stress. So his season wasn't that good. But again, it goes to show that because a guy struggles for a couple of years, there could be more to the story, Greg, than just the rider, So now he's on a team that he's comfortable with again, on a bike that he's obviously adapted himself very well to. And if he could kind of take a little bit of the Marquez step back and finish in those seconds and thirds and fourths, I think Sam Lowe's has his best chance to win a Moto2 World Championship.
And obviously he's on a chassis. So when we look at the field, the motors are all the same, but you have a couple different chassis. Kalex is one, Speed Up is another one. There's NTS. Obviously KTM has their chassis, and MV Agusta as well. So if you look at the way the last test ended up, the top 6 were Kalex's. Then you had a Speed Up in there, Navarro, but then another couple Kalex's. You didn't see the first KTM until 10th place. So
right,
at least on paper now, you have to say not only is Sam Lowe's in a good place, obviously, if he can shake off the last couple of seasons, he's with a great team, but it looks like he's on the chassis of choice as well. And if you look at those times, Jay, if you go back, Lowe's finished 0.2 of a second ahead of Luthi in terms of outright time. That's a big margin, 0.2, 0.224.
Yeah.
Luthi was only .092 ahead of Gardner. Augusta Fernandez was only .002 ahead of that, like behind. And so it's so tight. And obviously this is just Qatar. It's just the test, but with equal equipment and everything else, you have to say to yourself, wait a second. Sam Lowe's
he's had
is
pace
riding it. He's everywhere. He's been in the top 2 or top 3 every test. So
and he's, when you talk, or when you, again, just knowing Sam a little through Alex, and basically I Instagram text kind of with Sam quite a bit, and he's just such a good guy, man. He's so positive all the time. He's happy. He's a dad now. I think he's in probably a little different space than he was a couple of years ago. But when you look at the 210s, Greg, that's the thing that makes Moto2 and Moto3 so cool, is really at a place like Doha, because it's fast and flowy, and you have the potential of being able to get that draft down the front straight. Lap times don't really mean a lot, because 2/10, 3/10, even half a second, you're going to be able to get in that lead draft. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that. It's going to be a slugfest in Moto2 this year. I think I'm looking forward to watching that class more this year than I have been in years before. It's been a little bit boring. And I think that you cannot forget that Tom Luthi is former Moto2 world champion, who I don't believe even scored a point last year in MotoGP. So he's probably going to come back with a little vigor and fight in him. He's going to be wanting to prove something to some of these kids, I'm sure, as well.
And if anybody's wondering, MotoGP is still on beIN Sports Network. If you don't get it, Jason and I both recommend just buy the package. You get so much great content. If we're spending the money, it's so worth it. If you don't, just get involved and watch, because Moto3 is going to be great. Moto2 and MotoGP, though, have me so excited. I can't wait to watch that racing.
When you look at what the package is, and now for me, I mean, they could be charging me $1,000. I don't know, because I've been doing it for so long. It just goes through on my card. But the content, the stuff that you get, the interviews, but the no spoiler feature is great, because if you have something that you need to be able to go and do or whatever, you can just come back and you can put no spoiler on, and you can watch all 3 races. I watch everything, the content and stuff. And that's why I think it's so cool that MotoAmerica's done this year, is it's going to allow people to kind of check in when they want to check in. And you did mention Moto3, Greg, and I don't know if you noticed this, and I'm not putting you on the spot, so don't go crazy with the computer right now. But did you happen to see who was quickest at the Qatar test in Moto3? And I'm telling you this off the cuff, and you're so much better on the computer than I am.
I didn't. I am not even going to look. Who was fastest?
Romano Fenati.
Oh,
yeah. So
that's
Romano Fenati that's my boy. His teammates with Arbolino, they've given, obviously he's back in, which is good. He's in Moto3, and it'll be interesting to see if he comes back a little different guy than he was prior. And it's funny how time heals everything. You read a lot of comments about, I'm glad they let him back in. I'm glad this, I'm glad that, because at the time when he's grabbing somebody's front brake lever in 4th or 5th gear there at Misano, there was a lot of people, including myself, that were very critical. Cal Crutchlow, just don't feel like there's much need for that. And hopefully he can resurrect things a little bit here. Obviously the kid's incredibly talented, but looking down, you got Arbolino. Della Porta is going to be hard on the Leopard Racing team again. Antonelli, John McPhee is back with another team again. Aaron Canet. These are all guys that are going to be battling again. And, we're going to see possibly a new world champion in Moto3, which will make that series in and of itself pretty entertaining too. So MotoGP weekend is upon us, people. Enjoy yourselves watching all of it this weekend.
And we'll definitely cover it all next week. But Jay, you mentioned MotoAmerica, and over the weekend and on Monday, Kyle Wyman was all over social media showing us his new MotoAmerica race bikes in the form of 2 brand new Ducati Panigale V4 Rs. And here's a little clip from him at the racetrack on Monday. This is what, at least in stock trim, the bike sounds like. Oh, man, that sounds good, doesn't it? So,
amazing.
Yeah. And so, of course, I buzzed Kyle up and I asked him, so Kyle, what's going on, man?
Yeah, so this past week, we got delivery of our 2 Panigale V4 Rs. They showed up the last day of February. Like they said, by end of February, they showed up last day. So we got them out to Tucson. We got them PDI'd at the dealership and at Animoto, and we're just it's been a whirlwind as you'd expect. But I went on a street ride on one of them, and then yesterday I got to spin about 20 laps on the track. So it's been a good couple days. It's pretty amazing bike. Obviously, it's as good on track as it is on paper. Truthfully, after riding the V4S back in December, I expected it to be something like that. Another step above that. I did not expect it to be a world different from the S. I mean, it could not be more different. So, in a good way, in every way, felt lighter, felt more nimble, felt easier to ride. I went a second faster on it right away on like lap 9 than I did on the V4S without really, keeping in mind that if I cartwheel this thing, I won't make Road Atlanta, so, so yeah, I was like really impressed. And, for me, just to have like a base feel and understanding of what it's going to be, is just huge for me, because we may not be able to test this thing. We're going to try to, once we get it prepped, but you never know how it's going to go. So, it's good to have that thought, that feeling in the back of my head that I can think about and kind of visualize.
Behind the 8 ball, man. But what do you think about his comments?
What's funny, Greg, is that there are times when you and I are doing the same thing and we don't even know we're doing it, because you and I talk so much about so much stuff. But this week on Instagram, you know how they do the stories on the top? I'll flip through those. But I stopped on Kyle's this week, and I actually watched, it was like 20 minutes or at least probably 20 minutes of the story that he did of the bikes being in crates, and they're uncrating them. I mean, like literally uncrating them. Kyle's, I think Hannah was taking the video. Kyle was initially. And it just brought back a lot of memories for me when I was starting up, when I was racing, of that thrill of, you got your new toy. It's here. It's like delivered. It's in this crate, and you're uncrating it, and you're seeing it develop from what it was to what it's going to be. And it wrapped me up a little bit, to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch this whole thing. And they unload the first bike, they put it on the stand, they're taking all the paper off it and the plastics off it of that they ship the bikes in for safety. And you can see the winglets, and you can just see Kyle is kind of like, he's like a kid. This is like Christmas,
Yeah.
And so I watched it, and then they unload the second bike and they start doing kind of the same stuff there. And it's great. He's done so much through his social media to be able to keep fan bases and things like that in touch with what's going on. It's great that we have a Ducati in the paddock, so that people that are part of Ducati, that have bought bikes and things, have a guy they can come and cheer for at MotoAmerica now, which I love. But I immediately hit him up. We texted each other for probably 45 minutes. As soon as I got done watching the video, I was kind of hitting him up and talking to him about it. And they are under the gun for sure. I think that the bike itself, though, I think it's got a great starting package, as far as, like he even said, he went second quicker on his 9th lap. He's just got to make sure he gets those first 2 races out of the way, because I think that they're going to try to get some testing done after COTA. So he's kind of got the little bit like what Josh had last year. He's got a stock bike that he's going to go race on at Atlanta and COTA. I'm the guys he's got involved, Greg, he's got some really good guys involved in his corner. And I'm not going to mention those guys' names, because I don't know if Kyle's ready to announce who he's got working with him yet going forward, but he's got a very good support team around him. My biggest concern is making sure that he gets the stuff from Ducati course that he needs, in the sense of he's very open about, on social media, he was very open about how much they've been keeping in contact with him daily. Even during the Phillip Island weekend, they were explaining things to him about the bike. That's going to be key as far as getting that technical advice and help, along with the guys that he's got. I really do think Kyle can have a great year on this thing.
I agree. But, Jay, MotoAmerica, like you're saying, it's like just about 30 days away. So I asked Kyle, I was like,
yeah.
okay, you got the bikes. Now what?
Well, I am picking up the second bike right now. I'm heading out the door, and I'm going to have the two twins, call them Daphne and Daphne Dose. We're going to bring them out to Gary's shop today and start tearing apart. One of them will go to Gary's shop, and one is going to go straight to TaylorMade to have the bodywork made, and that's going to be a challenge on its own. So, yeah, a lot of work ahead of us. We got a lot to do, but I've hopefully done all the planning, the right way. Wheels are already on the way. Brakes are already on the way. Everything, most of the stuff that we need is on the way. Stuff that we haven't been able to, or we don't have to, like, manufacture or like create custom. And then our fuel tanks, they've been in the works for a couple of weeks because I bought that standard V4 and got that out to my boy Jeff in Irvine, and he's already been working on actually fabricating fuel tanks for a couple of weeks now. So that was a huge head start for that, because you can ride the bike without race bodywork if you want. You can ride it without electronics or good brakes or whatever, but you cannot ride it if you can't go race distance. So the fuel tank has been the number one priority by far.
What's interesting when you answered that question at the beginning, Jason, was you could kind of hear the pauses in his voice as he's going over the grocery list of things that have to be done and what he's going to say and what he doesn't say. And I mean, it's got to be overwhelming for the guy.
Well, this is what I'm hoping for Kyle more than anything in the world this year, is that he's put in so much time, so much effort. It's taken, I can't imagine. I used to sit and listen to Richie Alexander talk about what it takes to run a team as far as the prep and all that. Even Pete up at Gemini, I used to listen to those guys, and I think to myself, man, I would not be cut out for that part of it at all. Like the stuff that it takes, and Kyle obviously is a super knowledgeable guy. But what I hope more than anything for Kyle is that after all of this initial wave of work that they are getting done, and he's only if he's probably only about 45 minutes away from me. He's not that far at all from me right now, coming from Tucson. But if they get all this wave of work done, man, I hope he can go to the races and really trust the guys that he's got. You heard him talk about going to Gary Dean's shop. That's in just Valencia, 40 minutes away. Gary's wealth of knowledge. And I hope that he could just go concentrate on racing, Greg. I think that Kyle's the kind of guy that he's a team owner. He's very hands-on, and it's really, really hard to go out and race against Tony and Heron and Cameron and Garrett and Skoltzy and Jake, all these guys that are focusing on riding. It's a big task to have your hands in so many pots and then throw the helmet on, put the strap on, and go, okay, like, now I got to be a racer. I hope that they can get these things good. Right?
Add to that the fact that Bautista goes out and does the triple, the first race of the year, and Kyle's getting messages from people saying, pressure's on now, man. Like, whoa. Pressure's not on. First of all, he's just got to get the bike around the full race distance. You know what I mean? Like, everybody just calm down. He literally got the bikes a couple days ago. Let's just get him a tank so he can go race distance first, and then kind of we'll build from there. So.
Yeah, but the people that write that stuff, they don't know.
Yeah, I know.
They just don't know. They don't. It's the same people that sit there and go, well, there were 3 other Ducatis in the race at Phillip Island. They just, it's not that simple. It doesn't look, it's not like that. This bike that Kyle's on is a quarter of half the bike that Bautista is going to be on when he gets to Road Atlanta and rides. Is it going to get closer? 100%. It'll get closer and closer, and there'll be more knowledge about the bike, and there'll be more things going on, and this and that. But there's no pressure on Kyle. The only pressure on Kyle right now is getting to that first race, just getting there and making sure he has a bike that goes around and he has a tank that can hold enough fuel in it so that he can go race distance. That's enough pressure.
And if I know Kyle, Jason, he's going to have some type of team promotion or something going on during the course of the year where he's going to start piling in race fans on top of his program. So I think if he just gets these first 2 under his belt, like you're saying, he just is able to strap the helmet on and be a racer, at least for a little while, it's going to really be good for him. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, adding him on this Ducati to the series is a good shot in the arm in terms of getting people interested. Is it going to be a shot in the arm for another person up front? I'm going to say not right now. I mean, they've got a lot of work to do, and no one else has data. It's a brand new bike. There's nobody else running it, so it's stacked up against them. But I think they're up for it.
Nope, I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm pumped for Kyle. I've gotten to be what I would consider a friend with him. I love being able to just talk with him and hear the excitement. Obviously, we get to see Hannah all the time too this year, so she gives us a lot of information about what's going on there with Kyle too. So best of luck to him. Glad he checked in. And, I think that we're going to have a lot more MotoAmerica talk coming in the next coming weeks. There's so much going on with Daytona 200 coming, World Superbike coming next weekend. So we're going to just continue to build on the MotoAmerica season as we get closer, Greg. So I'm glad Kyle checked in. So let's move on to some important stuff. Let's get to the important stuff.
All right.
The RM Fantasy Supercross that we are in.
Yeah.
I get a lot of comments about me jabbing you and making fun of you and all that stuff. And there's such an easy way for that to stop. Like, just be successful, Greg. One weekend, you scored 15 points last week. 15. Like, honestly, my mom doesn't know anything about Supercross. And if I put a computer in front of her, she could probably score more than 15 points.
First of all, okay, at this stage of the season, I've got to take some risks, okay? And
I get you.
So that's
and you're 30.
Why is it that you get so excited?
You're 30.
And you just eat
you're
that
36.
microphone? Well, I know.
36.
And the worst part is the worst part is
say it.
Beat G-Dub is now ahead of me.
Oh,
he's
just
ahead of me.
Destroyed you. And Travis scored 71 points. Travis is loving the fact that we're talking about him. He couldn't have picked a better screen name, could he? And 71 points that Travis scored. Like, now you might as well just put that $20 into that Road Racing Action Fund right now, or make another bet with them or something, because it's not good. It's not good, G-Dub. But there are some big movers this week. You probably don't go anywhere near the top, but so let me help you here. Okay.
Go ahead.
Big movers the last couple weeks. Miles Thornton is coming. Like, he's coming after all of us now. He scored 62 this last week in our fantasy Supercross. And the other big mover is my boy Cole. And he scored, are you ready for this, G-Dub? Cole scored 83 points last week.
Whoa.
83.
All right. Well, let me go. Let me go back a little bit.
That's pretty good.
Right, let me go back. Let's just say Fracci 17, 334 total points, tied at the moment with Sea Dog 23. That's Corey Alexander. Lugnut 69, only 3 adrift in third spot.
3 points back. Yeah.
And then there's Stupid McDumdum, JP 43, sitting four points back so up top. It's looking pretty good. I mean. Yeah. So how many points do I have total? Hold on. Let me scroll down. Hold on.
You got 190 points. Ooh. You have 190.
Ooh. Yeah, but one good weekend out of 100 points, and I'm right in the mix.
Bro, you're 50,925th overall in this pool.
Yeah.
There's 65,000 people, I think, that are doing it.
Yeah.
Or 66, something like that.
Who is Cole Trickle 68?
That's my guy. That's Cole. Cole Fagatti.
Cole Trickle.
He killed it.
Isn't that a NASCAR name? Yeah, he had a comment up there. You know what I mean? Like, he had a comment.
Oh, we did. Where's it at?
ATL was good for me, gunning for you, G-Dub and JP.
There you go.
Beat G-Dub, our boy Travis. Hope you had a good night, G-Dub. Ha, ha, ha. I'm going to be peeling your paint this week.
It's great.
Can you believe that? I mean, he's talking trash in the group.
Oh, wait. I'm just even seeing now Fatchy 17's calling me out. Thanks for the mention of the podcast. Keep up the great podcast, and I will keep beating Pridmore.
Whoa.
All right.
You're my boy.
That's okay.
Fatchy, you're my boy or girl. I don't know who it is.
Let me tell you right now, you had a big lead. It's gone. The lead is gone. But you know what? We're only halfway through the season. I think halfway through last week's Supercross was officially halfway through. And Greg, I'm going to tell you right now, this week's picks for Daytona will be easier. It's so easy.
Chad Reed for the win.
This week's picks are it's so easy this week.
Chad Reed for the win.
Okay, so Greg, step up your game. Let's see what you got. join us on RM Fantasy Supercross if you haven't already. Because I think can somebody still join us, Greg? Like in the sense that if they're picking picks, they could still be part of our group. They could still come in and be part of it, or no? Can they? Okay,
yeah, they sure can. Yeah, they can come in and join us. It's a lot of fun, and obviously, if you haven't done it yet, it makes watching the race a totally different thing. Totally different.
Yeah.
Thing.
Do you think? Here's the question. Right now, 20th place is at 246. So you're 56 points out of 20th. I mean, Dan's ahead of you.
Okay. Can we drop
He's
this
ahead
talk?
of you.
Because we haven't even gone over Supercross yet. All right. Let's just recap it really quickly, shall we? All right.
Let's do it.
Cooper Webb with his 5th win of the season. He takes victory over Blake Baggett, Marvin Musquin, Ken Roxon, and Aaron Plessinger was 5th. Eli Tomac was in 6th. Justin Brayton, Dean Wilson, Savachi, Cole Seeley. Our boy Chad Reed was in a comfortable top, 8 position, but he ended up tipping over. But of course, he called us, as you know, from earlier in the podcast. And so here's Chad's comments about how his weekend, or how it went, how he looked at the whole weekend. Here's Chad.
Yeah, it was a tough one. And tough one because more that, like I don't have any answers other than it wasn't like I had more struggles than normal or I was uncomfortable all day or anything. Like I actually felt quite competitive. I felt good to go. But for whatever reason, from the last practice, the last qualifying, I struggled a little more, or I was a little less comfortable than I was earlier in the day. And then that, unfortunately, just carried over into the night show. And my heat was less than impressive. And then I put a few good laps together, and then I started getting a bit of a rhythm, and then I just got caught behind Tyler Bowers, and it was just really, really tough to pass. It's kind of like I was getting frustrated because I couldn't go, and I was watching the front guys go away. But with saying that, I wasn't the only one. There was a freight train of people behind me, and so it was hard because I was trying to put pressure on and move around the racetrack a little bit to try to see where I could get up the inside or make a pass. And every time I did it, it would always lead me to feed myself to the wolves, behind me. Yeah, I mean, I made one little mistake, and I think 2 or 3 guys passed me. And then they got the Bowers, and then kind of Bowers at that point seemingly was tired and then just let them by. And then I got back on him, and he let me by. And I was like, you could have done that 5-6 laps ago. So, yeah, it was just one of those races where, I honestly felt that I wasn't that far off. I was like 5th fastest in the main event. I did my fastest lap of the night and all day in the main event. But yet, what was a, less than impressive result on paper. I crashed, which obviously contributed to my, I probably, at worst, I would have been 10th. I had a potential to sniff around anywhere from 10, 7 to 10, I think. Maybe even 6 if I had have really got my shit together and held off Eli, which I think was possible because I didn't really think that he was riding that amazing this weekend either. So, yeah, it was just one of those racetracks that didn't allow progression through the race. Not anyone really. When I look at the lap charts and the timing, and I try to break it down and dissect, what I could have done better. It's like I don't necessarily see that anybody did anything drastically different. Basically the top 5 stayed the top 5 off the start. So it just, I lean towards the start was key.
Yeah, but Greg, one thing I want you to talk about with Chad next week, and I don't want to put him on the spot to be overly critical, but the tracks suck. Honestly, the last 2 weeks, the tracks have been crap. The passing, it doesn't, the passing itself, there is no passing. And in Supercross, if you put all the emphasis on just the start, like he said it in his, I wonder if he thinks it. I'm not putting words in his mouth, but the top 5 guys did stay the same.
No, and
Plessinger fell over and still finished 5th because it's so hard to pass. And Tomac, literally, number one, the guy should spend 10 hours a day on a gate because he can't get a start.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't get a start, and in fairness, in our fantasy Supercross thing, the thing that I think, I'll give you a little tip here, Greg, is go in and look at the tracks before you pick your 5 guys. Because Cooper Webb is always in the top 5, top 6 off the start, and he's proven to come through. Blake Baggett, same, can come through. Tomac, if he gets a shit start, he cannot come through the pack. He just can't. It's like it's really, really hard for him to be able to come through the pack. And he's the fastest guy week in and week out. He's always up in the front. He's always in qualifying. He's always in the top 2 or 3. But it doesn't matter because if you can't get a start, it just doesn't matter. And the last 2 weeks, in my opinion, which means nothing in Supercross, the tracks have just been garbage. They're fun to look at. They're fun to watch. And a lot of the riders were very, very critical of the sand section this week. They're like, if you're going to have sand, you got to put it in a straight. Don't put it in the middle of a corner going up through a over under. And, as a fan, it's nice to see some different surfaces and that kind of thing. But I kind of tend to see what they're saying because did you see Chad take out Tomac in the heat race?
No, I didn't see it.
He literally just came out of the rut. He was on the inside, got the front wheel up over. It was totally unintentional. It was not anything really. It wasn't really anything. Nobody even talked about it. But Tomac ended up, having to come back through and get in and all that stuff. But the tracks just haven't been conducive to really close, fun racing. And it's kind of got to the point where it's just kind of boring.
Well, and Chad did talk about it. Like, I just didn't add it in, because for time, obviously we're at, over an hour and 20 minutes at this point, but for time, but he talked about it. The sand, they just haven't gotten it right yet. It's just not the place to put it. He was like, look, tear-offs are in groups of 7 on their goggles. Uh-huh. And he said, normally you can get away with 7. He goes, this week we stacked 3. So you had 21 tear-offs.
21, yeah.
And he said you were having to grab 2 tear-offs a lap. You do the math, so it's crazy. Yeah, it became, and I, I'm sure in endurance, I would imagine. I mean, I've been in races before with ARAI helmet where I have tear-offs from the States, and they're a little bit thicker than you get them in MotoGP. But I've been in races where I've had 4 tear-offs, and even that, a few years back when I was racing, a long time ago, it would distort the vision a little bit, and it used to drive me bonkers. So I would come around on the warm-up lap and just grab one immediately and take it off.
Yeah, totally.
I can't imagine, even with technology.
You see a lot of guys do that on the grid, right? Greg? Yeah. You see a lot of guys come off the cool-off lap and just or warm-up lap,
rip one. I can't imagine having 21 tear-offs on your goggles. Amazing. And how that would kind of look visually. And I haven't asked Chad about that, but it's not something they like to do. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the tracks the last couple of weeks haven't been that great. Actually, most of the season, with track breakdown, they've had bad weather. I mean, there's been different things this year. It's been very trying, and credit to the riders out there that we haven't seen more bounce out this time of year. Usually with Supercross, we see a lot more injuries than we've had where riders aren't showing up to races any longer. So they've done a good job of managing what they've been given, but I don't think it's produced great racing, if that makes any sense.
With you. Totally with you. And in that night, the thing I loved more than anything, I saw you retweeted my tweet, but I love Adam Cianciarulo. I think the kid's such a class act.
Yeah,
he's
good.
He's so good, and he's great in front of a microphone and in front of a camera, and it's going to be really fun to watch him jump up onto the 450, moving forward next year. I'm assuming that's where he would be. And so he won the East-West kind of 250 shootout. I think they have 2 of those a year, Greg. One of them in Vegas at the end, and they mix the 250 West and East guys together. And Faulkner had been dominating, but Cianciarulo just looked unbeatable and just looked so good all night. And then, of course, like I made mention in a tweet about his winter interview and how he just seems to just say the right things. He mentions the right people, and he's very complimentary of his competition and just does the right stuff. So good on him for doing what he did this last weekend too. And one other note about the fantasy Supercross, Greg, just one quick one. How about Corey Alexander didn't even get his picks in, so he had to go with his picks from the week prior. How lucky is he?
Oh, come on. He didn't.
Yeah, he didn't even get him in. He got 50 points. He didn't even make picks this week. He got 50 points from the week prior because he was too busy getting his truck and stuff ready to get down to Daytona
I've got to go racing. Come on.
And it was snowing so hard in New York, he's trying to get out of there. He had forgotten about Supercross. And I'm like, well, maybe you'll do okay. Well, he did, because Cooper won. Marvin was second. He had those 2 guys. Roxon got in there. So he got 50 points on the weekend.
What a guy. All right, let's move on, Jason, because as you know, it's time for our Quick Shift segment presented by ARAI Helmets. For 3 generations, ARAI has been making some of the world's best helmets. And of course, ARAI helmets meet all safety standards. But they also pride themselves and having a blend of engineering tech and human craftsmanship that makes an ARAI helmet fit better and feel better, which also protects you better. Your head's worth the best. Visit ARAIAmericas.com for more information on tech, fit, and paint jobs. ARAIAmericas.com. You owe it to yourself. All right, Jason, let's move into our final segment. Quick shift here. I'm just going to ask you a couple things. We're going to put some time on the clock, somewhere around 60 seconds. When I'm done with 60 seconds, you hear that. Whether you keep talking or not, it's up to you. There is some sad news coming out of the UK. Prodigy singer, team owner, and former rider racer Keith Flint passed away. You knew Keith a little bit, didn't you, Jay?
Man, it's so strange because there's certain people that you meet along your life. I would have never, ever known Keith Flint at all. And there's a lot of people in the BSB paddock that know him way better than I did. But I met Keith 2013 at the Le Mans 24 Hour with Steve Mercer. And I'd taken Rispoli over there with me to kind of be the backup rider on our team that year. And they hit it off together. And next thing you know, Keith basically opened the doors for James to be able to come and ride over in England. And so I went over there. I went over there a few times. I got to hang out with Keith quite a bit. I got to hang out with him a little bit at his place. And there's just not a nicer guy that you'll ever meet. So in the mid 90s, I used to listen to the Prodigy a lot. I knew all the songs. I knew who he was. And he actually came up and stood behind me or stood next to me at Brands Hatch in like 2010. And I was a little bit starstruck. I was like, oh my God, it's Keith Flint, you know? And I didn't realize at that point that he loved motorcycling like he did, Greg, you know? Yeah. And over the time, 3 years later, I get to meet him, get to hang out with him. He was the kind of guy that when you would talk to him, he would look you right in the eyes, and he was very engaged in everything you said. He was not the guy that was unengaging. He would give you follow-up questions and things. And the hearing of his passing really affected me. I know it affected James and Steve and the whole, music industry, as well as there's a lot of people. But the guy, what people don't know over here about Keith is how much he loved to ride, Greg. He loved it. Like, he loved riding, and he had a lot of bikes. And he actually did, I can't remember if it was the Northwest or the Ulster.
Oh, really?
But in 2014, he actually went and did it. He actually went and did.
Good for him.
I'd have to do a little bit of my homework there, but I know he went and did one of them because I remember talking to him about it. But just I had a picture of him on my phone from one of his concerts with the green hair that, he looks absolutely crazy in this picture. And I said to him, I'm like, you don't represent kind of what you'd think this guy represents when you look at it. And he was just a great showman. He was still selling places out even now. And it's just a huge tragedy. So my thoughts and prayers are with everybody over that knew him and all that stuff over in England. And he left a lot of people behind that are going to miss him. This last week, Greg, JD Beach was testing out at Chuckwalla again. Talking to Richard Stamboli a little bit, he said JD wanted the seat time and he wanted to work on some chatter and working on some things that JD's trying to break, like as far as habits go. And that, I think, is going to come a little bit from his 600. And this is something that you and I talked about. Do you remember I told you I saw a video of him at Thunder Hill?
Yeah.
I think about a month ago. But he was out at the track day this last week, and he's getting more laps on the bike. What do you think about that?
Obviously, we talked about, it's great. Endurance racing, more seat time is better. But especially with data and with Richard Stamboli behind, the whole behind the wheel, I guess you could say, understanding that JD is still trying to break the habit of running it in like a 600, where we know one of the better ways to ride a super bike is go ahead and just grab that front brake lever, get it stopped straight up and down, get it turned, and then get it back up on the meat of the tire. So I think Richard understands. He's got good data from Josh Herron, obviously. He's got good data, probably knowing Richard dating back all the way to when you rode 1,000. So I think it's really good that he's going to get on that bike or continues to get on that bike. And we have, maybe 28 days or so left. So I would imagine he's going to get on it even more, because if Richard has his way, he wants to make sure JD is a race winner by the time we roll to Road Atlanta. What do you think?
I talked to a couple people this week, and they were asking me, like, we'll get into this in a couple of weeks, but they were kind of talking to me about top 3 in MotoAmerica this year. And JD's name wasn't getting mentioned. And I thought it was funny. And I still think it's funny. I think that in the day now that we have with electronics, in the day and age that we have, that there's not really a reason to be backing a bike in as much, even if that's the comfortable way for you to ride. I think that if you make that the comfortable way, but you realize that it's something that is costing you time, you have to be willing to change. And JD is so open-minded and so into learning and so into getting better that he will change it. And just a little spoiler alert, I have JD Beach in my top 3 this year. So I think that when you look at it, he's going to adapt. And I think that with Stamboli, I think that I'm expecting kind of really great things from him.
All right, MotoAmerica Supersport Rising Star Richie Escalante returns to the track with Hudson Motorcycles and HB Racing with crew chief Curtis Tom. Jason, what do you think about Escalante's return to Supersport?
When you talk about guys that aren't getting talked about, there's another one, okay? I rate this kid. I think Richie Escalante is a hard charger. He works hard. I think that the fact that Hudson Motorcycle Team has come back into our paddock again. Last year was their first year in the paddock. They jumped into Superbike, and then they had Richie on 600. I feel that what they have done by downsizing their project as far as having a 600 rider only will pay huge dividends for them and for the team. I like his crew chief with Curtis. I think that if Richie's kind of another one of those kids where he's got to work on his racecraft, I think the team have the capabilities of putting a winning bike underneath him and a bike that could be there. And I think that he has to be able to ride a little less frantic, I think, Greg, is the best way I could put it. I think that he needs to know that he's got the pace and he's got the wherewithal to do really well. But he's got to be patient and he's got to take some of those results, because when people talk about Hayden Gillum and PJ Jacobson and Bobby Fawn being on like the main 3 guys, Richie Escalante, Bryce Pence, some of these guys are right up there with me. But I think Escalante has the potential to move the needle more than anybody that doesn't get talked about in that class this year. So I expect big things from him.
Yep, it's going to be interesting to see if he can catch him. All right, let's move on to our race calendar, because Jason and I encourage everyone to get out of the house, get off the computer, and go watch some racing. Monster Energy Supercross is in Daytona. FIM World Super Enduro is in Spain, just in case you're listening across the pond. MotoGP is in Qatar, of course. The AMSOIL GNCC presented by Specialized in Florida for that Moose Racing Wild Boar. That, of course, is going to be their season opener because the season opener was canceled. Supercross star Aaron Plessinger will be the Grand Marshal, by the way. So if you want to go meet Aaron, go check out GNCC Racing. So go out and do some racing, or go to some race. Go do some racing. Go watch some racing. Just do something with a motorcycle. Racing. Yeah. Go get a job and buy more motorcycles. We all need that. It's Daytona.
It's bike week, man. It's bike week. It's Daytona. The season is really kicking off, and man, I'm looking forward to this weekend. I'm going to just be plugged into MotoGP.com and on the couch all weekend long watching all of it and streaming it right to my TV, which is going to be great. And are you going to be doing the same, I'm assuming?
I am. Got a little bit of an archery tournament on Saturday, but that's like kind of midday, like for 3 hours. And then I even talked to Chad about it. I said, so how are you going to watch Qatar? He said, I think I'll just watch whatever I can before I go to race the main event. I'll race the main event Supercross, then get right back to Qatar and watch it Saturday night. So I think that's going to be it. Yeah. Next week, Jason, we're going to have American Flat Track. We're going to talk about the Daytona TT. We're going to talk about the Daytona 200. And of course, we'll talk MotoGP, Qatar, and so much more. So make sure you join us for our next podcast. All right?
Mm-hmm. I'll be here.
Well, we're going to leave you with this one as Jason says goodbye. How about another little run of Kyle Wyman's Ducati Panigale V4 R that we'll see in MotoAmerica competition on the way out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you or talk to you, or you'll hear us next week.